This is part 3 of Loneliness, Grief's Elephant in the Room. And tonight we're going to be looking at From Tribulation to Hope. And our text is Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. And this is how it reads. But we also rejoice in tribulation, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. You know, this is one of those verses that's kind of hard to get your head around. Kind of like when it says that Jesus was perfected through the things he suffered. You know, we don't like to be perfected through the things we suffer. And I think most of us would also say that we don't do a very good job of rejoicing in our tribulations or in our sufferings. You know, a lot of times when we're going through a difficult time, and this goes beyond just grief, but when we're going through various tribulations, we frequently ask the question to God, when can I get out of this? When does this thing end, right? But I think a better question, rather to ask when, is to ask what. What can I get out of this? In this case, our suffering leads to perseverance, and our perseverance leads to character, and then character leads to hope. And it's been now 1 year and 9 months to the day today since Benita passed away. And I can say that I do feel more hopeful about life. You know, I still have my troughs of that despairing feeling or that empty or lonely feeling. They last longer than a moment, but they're certainly shorter than a season, you know. And I have those moments when my wife's absence really hits me pretty hard still sometimes. You know, but again, they're more like long moments as opposed to seasons. You know, so it's a process. You know, it's a process that starts with our suffering. We persevere. It builds character, and character produces hope. I've been parked on Psalm 126, verses 5 and 6 for at least a couple of months now, and really kind of just meditating on this little passage. I always keep a bookmarker. I have like 4 different bookmarkers in my Bible. You know, one's in the Old Testament, one's in the New. I'm always in Psalms and Proverbs, and then I always have a bookmarker and on a verse I'm meditating on, and this is the one I had been meditating on the last couple of months. And this is how it reads. It says, "Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him." You know, the context of the psalm is when the Jews were coming back from Zion, from their Babylonian captivity. And it's probably very close to the time frame of Ezra, chapter 1, verse 1. And this is how it reads. It says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth the Lord God of heaven has given me, and he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. So even though this psalm is a psalm of rejoicing and gladness over the return, the land continued for many years to be in ruin and desolation, as we saw in part 2, when Nehemiah comes to assess the situation and rebuild the broken down walls and the burnt gates. You know, at the time that the psalm was penned, there probably wasn't an abundance of sheaves from a great harvest to be brought, right? So this psalm is both metaphoric and prophetic. It hasn't happened yet, but the psalmist says very confidently, those who sow in tears will reap in joy. So let me share with you, I guess, some of the things I've gleaned over the last 2 months on this little passage. I'm just going to read my notes here. To sow something means to plant. It's on purpose, right? It's intentional. It's an intentional act. You put little seeds in the ground or you scatter them. It's very similar to what I've been talking about in parts 1 and 2 about building relationship. It's an intentional act, okay? It just doesn't just kind of happen. We need to be intentional about relationships, be intentional about our activities, to involve ourselves with things that are productive and fruitful. Yes, this can feel very uncomfortable and awkward when you're in the middle of grief, or if you're in the middle of a very difficult trial. You do not feel like investing in other people or into relationships or into worthwhile endeavors. But you sow as you go. It says, he who continually goes forth weeping. While we are weeping, while we are in this grieving process, he who continually goes forth weeping, bearing his seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again, rejoicing. This is really important. It was an act of faith for the Israelites. They were going forth weeping. They were exiles from their homeland, but they were bearing their seed for sowing. Wherever they were going, they were going to bear their seed, and they were going to sow it, and one day return rejoicing and bearing their sheaves with them. So, what kind of seeds do we bear? What kind of seeds do we sow? Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 through 9 says this. It says, a man reaps what he sows. Let us not become weary in doing good, for in the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. So here are some practical things we can be sowing. As I've been saying all along, sow into friendships and relationships. Sow into meaningful endeavors. Give of yourself into meaningful endeavors. Sow into joyful occasions. You're not going to feel like it, but the things you sow are the things you're going to reap. And don't just show up. Just really Make an investment, get a card and write a nice note to the person you're rejoicing with. Make an investment, get a gift. Romans 12:15 says to rejoice with those who rejoice. Another way to a place to sow is to sow into the lives of those who are in sorrow and grief. I know a lot of people have done that for me. And the things that you have been comforted with, you're able to comfort others with also. So sow into those who are going through a sorrowful or difficult season. I believe the strongest relationships are the ones that are built during the time of adversity. Being there when your friend is going through adversity. That's where the strongest relationships are built. Not necessarily when everything is fine and fun and we're having a good time. We need those things too. But I believe the real metal of your relationship will be built in times of adversity. Something else that I've learned is to sow into lives of people who cannot return something back to you. This is not just poor people. This could be old people who cannot take care of themselves anymore, or they need help. This could be young people who maybe don't have the finances or the whereabouts or the resources to do certain things. So into lives of people who cannot return the favor, so to speak. And note, like I said in this passage, that they returned rejoicing with their sheaves. You bring your harvest back with you from your time of exile. It's in your season of grief you sow and you begin to harvest. It's not afterwards. It's not afterwards when you got it all together that you bring your sheaves in. It's as you are weeping, continually going forth, weeping, bearing your seed. As you are going through this process, you are sowing your seed, and you will begin to reap your harvest. And the last thing I want to say tonight is sow bountifully. In 2 Corinthians 9:6 it says this: "He who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully." If you're going through a season of grief and loss, you're not going to want to do these things. You're not going to feel like doing these things. So this is somewhat of an exhortation to you. There have been times, many times, when I didn't feel like doing things like this, but I made commitments to do it, and afterwards I was always happy and blessed that I did it. And now God's making it a way of life for me. I hope these messages have been helpful for you. These are just things I've learned along the way. I'm still in process. But I hope if you're going through a season of grief and loss, or people who are, I hope these messages are helpful to you. Until next time.